The air at the top of the wall bit into Ned Stark's skin like 1,000 tiny knives. It wasn't the clean chill of Winterfell's godswood, where the cold was a familiar companion. This was the walls, cold, heavy, unyielding, older than men's kingdoms. He stood alone, watching the endless sweep of white beyond, the forests black as ink against the snow. Somewhere out there, Benjen was riding. Somewhere out there, things stirred that the old stories whispered about in low voices. It had been 6 months since he had taken the black. 6 months since he had placed Longclaw, a sword that was not his, into Jeor Mormont's hands and spoken the vows before the heart tree. He'd left ice behind in Winterfell's crypts, where it belonged, not on the hip of a man who no longer held titles or lands. He'd done it by choice, not because Robert had ordered it, nor because some schemer in King's Landing had trapped him in a web of lies. No, he had seen where the game was heading. The crown was rotting from the inside, Robert drowning himself in wine and memories, the Lannisters coiling tighter around him with every passing moon. Ned had no taste for it, no wish to drag his family into a pit of southern vipers, so he had done the one thing that would remove him from it entirely. He had ridden north, sworn his vows, and given his life to the war. Rob had stood tall that day, trying to mask the boy still in him. "I'll make you proud, father," he'd said. His jaw set, though his eyes betrayed the fear of the weight being thrust upon him. Catelyn's face had been stone, but he had seen the glimmer of tears when she turned away. And John had ridden beside him all the way to Castle Black, and when the words were spoken, they'd spoken them together. It had eased the sting, knowing his bastard son would not be alone here, and neither would he. The sound of boots crunching in snow pulled him from his thoughts. "Cold enough for you, Stark?" came the gruff voice of Seer Alliser Thorne. The man had never liked him that much, was plain, but he respected rank, and Ned's rise had been swift. Mormont had stepped down within 2 moons of Ned's arrival, claiming his old bones were better suited for a steward's bed than a ranger's saddle. The vote had been near unanimous. Lord Eddard Stark, once Warden of the North, was now Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. "It's the cold that keeps us honest," Ned replied, his eyes still scanning the horizon. "You don't get soft when the air bites." Alliser grunted, unsure whether it was wisdom or insult, and handed him a scroll sealed with black wax. "Raven from Eastwatch. You'll want to see it." Ned broke the seal, scanning the message. His frown deepened. Tracks beyond the Frostfangs. Not men, not animals. Too many, moving together. Dead don't walk, but these leave no steam in the cold air. The signature at the bottom was Cotter Pike's. "Sound the horn," Ned said, his voice low but certain. "I want every man ready to ride by first light." Alliser stared at him. "You mean to chase ghosts?" Ned folded the parchment and slid it into his belt. "If they're ghosts, then we've nothing to fear. But if they're not..." His eyes drifted north again, where the white wasteland met the steel-grey sky. "Then the realm is in greater danger than it knows." Somewhere deep in his chest, the old words stirred. Winter is coming, and this time Ned meant to be ready for it. Snow fell in slow, heavy flakes that clung to the fur lining of Ned's cloak as he rode through the haunted forest. The sound of hooves was muffled under the thick blanket of white, and even the breath of the horses rose like pale ghosts in the air. The ranging had left Castle Black at dawn, 30 men, seasoned rangers mixed with younger brothers, eager to prove themselves. John rode at Ned's side, Ghost padding silently ahead. his white fur almost melting into the snow, until only his red eyes gave him away. They had been riding north for 2 days. The tracks Cottapike had written about were still ahead somewhere, too fresh to be lost yet, but too strange to be ignored. They weren't just big, they were wrong. Deep impressions that froze solid without melting. No sign of life to warm the air where the creature or creatures had passed. "You believe it, don't you?" John finally said, his voice low. Ned glanced at him. "I believe in proof, and I've seen enough war to know danger comes in many shapes. Some we've never faced before." John's brow furrowed. Most men in the watch would laugh at these stories, call them old women's tales. Ned's eyes stayed on the dark tree line ahead. Most men in the watch have never buried a friend in ground too frozen for a grave. He let the silence hang a moment before adding, "You'll find that the old stories stay alive for a reason." Behind them, Seer Alliser muttered curses under his breath about fools chasing fairy tales. Ned ignored him. Thorn was many things, but brave enough to believe was not one of them. By midday, they reached a clearing. The snow pressed flat in a wide circle. The tracks began here, heading west. Ned dismounted, crouching to study them. The hoofprints, if they were hoofprints, were oddly shaped, split wide, and far too deep for the weight of any normal beast. Around them, the trees stood dead and brittle. Their bark cracked as if burned by frost. "7 hells," muttered one of the younger brothers. "No steam at all." He leaned close, breathing on the print. His breath vanished in the air without a trace of warmth touching the snow. Ned's hand went to the hilt of his sword. "Form a perimeter. No one strays from sight." They followed the trail until the light began to fail, shadows stretching long and thin between the trees. That was when Ghost stopped, hackles raised, a low rumble in his throat. John froze beside him. From the tree line ahead, shapes emerged. 5, maybe 6. They walked like men, but too stiff, their limbs jerking like marionettes. The skin on their faces was pale blue, stretched tight over bone, and their eyes glowed like shards of ice. One of the rangers whispered a prayer to the 7. Another reached for a torch. "Hold your ground," Ned barked. His voice was calm, but his hand was already sliding Longclaw. No, not Longclaw. His sword now, given by Mormont when the command passed free from its scabbard. The things stopped, heads tilting in unison as though listening to some silent signal. Then, without warning, they charged. The first one came straight for Ned. His blade flashed in the dim light, slicing through the creature's neck. The head rolled into the snow, but the body kept moving for 3 long steps before collapsing. Another came at John, and Ghost lunged, jaws locking on its arm. The white didn't scream, it couldn't, but it fought with strength far beyond a man's fire. Ned roared, "Burn them!" Torches swung, flames caught, and the air filled with the sickening stench of burning flesh. When the last body fell, the snow around them was churned into a mess of blood, ash and ice. John was breathing hard, his knuckles white on the sword hilt. What in the name of the gods were those? Ned looked north, where the wind howled through the trees. "The beginning," he said quietly, "and the realm is not ready." Robb Stark read the letter 3 times before setting it down on the table in the solar. The candlelight flickered over the black wax seal, now broken, and the words written. In his father's hand. His father's hand, still alive, still steady, but carrying a weight that made the ink feel heavier than any crown. Catelyn stood by the window, the frost creeping over the glass. "What does he say?" she asked, though the look in her eyes told him she already feared the answer. Robb swallowed. "The stories are true. He's seen them, men, or what was left of them. Dead, walking, blue-eyed, cold as the wall itself." Catelyn turned to him slowly, her face pale. "He wouldn't write such a thing unless it was true," Robb finished. He sat back in the chair, running a hand through his hair. "He says the wall will hold for now, but the danger is real. He wants me to prepare the North. Not for the Lannisters, not for war in the South. For this." Maester Luwin stepped forward, his chains clinking softly. "My lord, if Lord Eddard speaks of these creatures, we must act. Food stores, fortified villages, trained men. The small folk will need shelter before the snows deepen." Catelyn's voice was sharper now. "And what of the South? You've heard the ravens. Robert grows weaker by the day, and the Lannisters' claws are in every part of the court. If we turn inward, we leave ourselves blind to their schemes." Robb stood, the words coming before he could think them through. "Father says the dead are walking, Mother. If that's true, the South can burn itself to the ground for all I care. We hold the North." Catelyn's lips pressed thin. "You sound like your father. And he's on the wall, where winter never ends." Robb moved to the map spread across the table. "We call the banners quietly. No songs, no feasts. Just quiet musters. We stock Winterfell with enough grain for 2 winters, maybe more. We send word to the mountain clans and the Manderleys. They'll listen. If the wall falls, it'll be the North that faces the storm first." Luwin nodded. "And if we're wrong," Robb's jaw tightened, "then we'll be the best-fed fools in the realm. But if we're right," his eyes drifted southward over the map to the jagged line of the wall, "then we might be the last hope anyone has." A knock came at the door, and Theon Greyjoy stepped inside without waiting. "Raven from White Harbour, my lord. Manderley says the Lannisters are moving ships north. Trade routes, they claim, but he smells war." Robb looked at his mother. "You wanted the South in our thoughts. Looks like it's coming, whether we want it or not." Catelyn took the letter from Theon, scanning it quickly. Her shoulders sagged just slightly. "Then you'll have 2 fronts to prepare for, the living and the dead." Outside, in the godswood, the wind howled through the branches, carrying with it a cold that bit deeper than usual, as if the North itself was listening. The great hall of Castle Black was crowded, the air thick with the smell of wet wool, smoke, and simmering resentment. Men sat at the long trestle tables, their faces pale from the cold outside, their eyes fixed on the raised dais where Ned Stark stood. On his left, Jon sat silent, ghost curled at his feet. On his right, Seer Alliser Thorne looked as if he'd bitten into something sour and couldn't spit it out. Across the hall, Tormund Johnsbane leaned against a pillar, grinning as if the whole thing were a mummer's farce. "You've all heard the reports," Ned began, his voice carrying over. The room without effort. "We faced the dead beyond the Frostfang. They do not tire, they do not bleed, and they do not fear steel. Fire will kill them. Dragonglass will kill them. Nothing else will." A murmur rippled through the brothers. Some crossed themselves, others scoffed. One old crow in the corner muttered old wives' tales. Ned let the noise die before speaking again. "The Watch cannot face this threat alone. Our numbers are too few. Our walls are strong, but a wall does not fight. Men do, and so I have sent word to Mance Rayder. that broke the hall into open outrage. Benches scraped, men shouted, curses flew. Alyssa Thorne slammed a fist on the table. You mean to invite the wildling scum into our stronghold? Ned's voice was steady. I mean to bring every living soul willing to stand against the others onto this side of the wall. Call them what you like, wildlings, free folk, savages. But they are men and women who know the lands beyond better than we do. They have fought these things in the dark, and they are losing. We will take them in, arm them, train them, and fight alongside them. Blasphemy, someone shouted. We've bled for hundreds of years to keep them out. And for what? Ned shot back, his voice sharp now. So we can die nobly when the dead come for us all. I will not throw away men for the sake of an old grudge. The Watch takes no part in the wars of the realm, but this is not the realm's war. This is the war for the living. Tormund chuckled from the pillar. Well said, Crow. Knew there was a reason Mance spoke well of you. Jon rose then, his voice clear and young but firm. I've fought beside the free folk. I've eaten with them, bled with them. They are no worse than the lords of the south, and some are far better. If my father, the Lord Commander, says they belong here, then I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. The room quieted, though the air was still thick with anger. Ned swept his gaze over them. I won't force a man to fight beside someone he cannot trust. But when the dead come, they won't care what name you were born under. They won't care if you were a lord's son or a wildling's whelp. All they will care about is killing you. And then they'll rise you up too. Kill your brothers. No one spoke after that. Even Alyssa Thorne kept his tongue. When the meeting broke, Jon walked with him out into the bitter night. They'll follow you, Jon said. Even if they hate it, they'll follow you. They'd better, Ned murmured, looking north, at the looming darkness beyond the wall. Because, if they don't, no one will be left to bury us. The gates of Castle Black groaned as they opened, iron hinges straining in the cold. Snow blew in with the wind, sharp as knives, and through it rode a column of ragged figures wrapped in furs and hides. At their head came Mance Rayder, his black hair shot through with grey, his smile the kind that could pass for charm or threat depending on the day. Beside him rode a woman with hair the colour of flame, Ygritte. Jon knew from his time beyond the wall and behind them. A host of free folk, giants in mammoth hide cloaks, spearwives with sharp eyes, and children clinging to their mothers. On the wall walk above, brothers of the Night's Watch lined the battlements, their hands resting uneasily on bowstrings. Seer Alyssa Thorne stood like a coiled spring, his face set in a permanent sneer. We open our gates to thieves and killers, he muttered. Might as well paint a target on our backs. They're not our enemy anymore, Ned said, his breath curling white in the air. The ones who can't understand that will learn. Soon enough, Mance reined in before Ned, swinging down from his saddle. 7 hells, Stark, he said, looking him up and down. You really did it. Left your castle, your lordship, your warm bed, for this frozen rock. I swore it. Vow, Ned replied evenly. Same as you, once. Mance's smile thinned. But I swore it to men who would rather keep me a crow in chains than let me breathe free air. I'll not forget that. This isn't about the past, Ned said. It's about the dead, the kind that don't stay in their graves. Mance's gaze sharpened, the smile slipping into something harder. I've seen them. Took half my best men near the Frostfangs. The rest would have gone too if not for Tormund here dragging them south. Tormund striding up behind Mance, grinned through his beard. Told you the crow had the right of it, Mance. Dead things don't care whose banner you fly. From behind, Ned, Jon stepped forward. We'll fight them together. If we start now, we can start now, Mance cut in. Boy, they've already started. You're just late to the war. Ned glanced back at the uneasy faces watching from the yard. Some of the Black brothers looked ready to spit, others to draw steel. Then we'd better catch up, he said. Mance studied him a moment longer, then nodded toward the open gates. Let's get out of the cold before my people turn to ice. You and I have much to talk about, Stark. As they moved inside, Seer Alliser leaned close to Ned. They'll slit our throats in our sleep. Ned didn't look at him. If they do, Thorn, you can be sure it won't be while we're sleeping. Inside the hall, the free folk took their places warily, their eyes scanning every corner. Ned took the high seat, Mance opposite him. They spoke long into the night. Maps spread between them, voices low but steady. They spoke of patrol routes, supply caches, and dragonglass, and of the icy tide that would one day come pouring out of the north. Neither of them said it aloud, but both knew the same truth. If this alliance failed, there wouldn't be a wall left to fight over. The Red Keep baked in the afternoon sun, the heat pooling in the marble halls until it felt thick enough to choke on. In the small council chamber, the windows stood wide, but no breeze came in from Blackwater Bay. Cersei Lannister lounged at the head of the table, golden hair catching the light, her smile sharp as a dagger. Beside her sat Lord Pettier Baelish, fingers steepled and Varys, silent and watchful in his soft slippers. On the table lay a raven scroll bearing the black seal of the Night's Watch, intercepted, as so many were, before it reached the lords, for whom it was meant. Cersei tapped one manicured nail against the parchment. So, Eddard Stark, former Warden of the North, now Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, has decided to fill the wall with wildlings. Littlefinger's smile was all silk and poison. A bold move. One could almost mistake it for treason. Their eyes widened in mock surprise. Treason, my lord, surely you jest. The Night's Watch swears no fealty to the crown, though in practice they have ever been loyal to the realm. Until now, Cersei said, her voice low. Do you know what people will hear when they learn of this? That Ned Stark is raising an army in the north, an army that owes no loyalty to King's Landing. Littlefinger leaned forward, and the free folk, savage, untamed, loyal to no one but themselves. What a perfect enemy to parade before the court. The wild wolf lets barbarians pass the gates, claiming he's saving us from fairy tale monsters. The lords will love it. Cersei's lips curved, then spread it. Let every lord south of the neck hear that the Starks are gathering savages in black cloaks. Let them wonder when that army will come marching south. Varys tilted his head, feigning thought, and if there truly is something beyond the wall, if his unusual coalition is the only thing keeping it at bay. Cersei waved a hand as though brushing away a gnat. Then he can die fighting it, and will send songs north to honor his sacrifice. Littlefinger's eyes glittered. A fine plan. And when the north starts to bristle under suspicion, we can send a royal envoy to Winterfell, purely for peace, of course. With enough silver and whispers, wolves can be made to fight each other. Varys said nothing, but as the conversation moved on to coin and ships, he turned his gaze toward the open window. Somewhere far to the north, the realm's true war was already beginning, and here in King's Landing they were still sharpening knives for each other. Snow whipped sideways across the training yard, the wind cutting like a blade. The cold here didn't just bite, it burrowed into the bones, and the men felt it in their tempers. The yard was crowded with black brothers and free folk alike. Arranged in loose ranks, the Night's Watch wore boiled leather and black cloaks, their shields plain in uniform. The free folk stood in furs and hides, bristling with mismatched axes, spears, and bows. No order, no discipline, just warriors used to fighting their own way. Ned stood at the center, Jon at his right, Mance at his left. "You're going to learn to fight together," Ned said, his voice carrying over the wind. "That means listening to orders, moving as one, and trusting the man beside you, no matter what name he was born under." A mutter ran through the Watch's ranks. Somewhere in the free folk lines, a man spat in the snow. Seer Alisar Thorne stepped forward, his tone dripping with contempt. "And if we don't trust them, Lord Commander, if we'd rather put a spear through their backs before they put one through ours?" Before Ned could answer, a wiry spearwife with a scar down her cheek laughed. "Try it, Crow. You'll find I'm quicker." That was all it took. One brother shoved a free folk man. The free folk man shoved back, harder. An axe handle cracked against a shield rim. Then the yard exploded. Steel clanged fists flew. Men went down in the snow with blood on their mouths. Jon was shouting for order, ghosts snapping at anyone who came too close. Mance waded in with a roar, grabbing two of his own by the collars and hurling them apart. Ned didn't shout. He didn't even raise his voice. He strode into the chaos and seized the nearest man, a black brother, by the back of the neck, hauling him up like a misbehaving child. "Drop it," he said, and the man dropped the dagger he hadn't realized he'd drawn. A giant of a wildling came at a watchman with a raised axe. Ned stepped between them, steel flashing. The axe stopped a hair's breadth from his face. The yard went still. "You want to kill each other?" Ned's voice was low, but it carried. "Do it beyond the wall, with the dead watching. See how much glory there is in it then." He let the silence stretch before speaking again. "This yard is for training. The man beside you is your brother. His life is your shield. If you can't stomach that, leave now and take your chances in the snow." No one moved. Ned sheathed his sword. "Then pick up your weapons and start again. You'll march together, fight together, eat together, and you'll keep doing it until you stop looking at each other like enemies." They went back to drilling, slower this time, eyes still wary. The snow kept falling, covering the blood before it could freeze. Jon leaned close as they walked the line. "They'll never truly trust each other." "They don't have to," Ned said. "They just have to be alive when the sun comes up." The wind beyond the wall carried no sound of life, only the moan of the ice and the groan of snow bending. Ancient trees. The ranging had gone farther north than most men dared, following scattered signs of the dead, tracks without breath, villages burned and empty, carcasses frozen solid without a mark of rot. The combined force moved through the woods like a dark shadow, black cloaks and fur, hides side by side, shields slung torches, ready. Ned rode at the head, Jon at his right, Mance at his left. Even the giants walked in silence. By dusk, they reached a wide clearing. The snow there churned into jagged patterns. In the center stood a ring of standing stones, their surfaces rimed, with frost so deep it glittered in the dying light. "Where are the bodies?" Jon murmured. "They're here," Mance said grimly. "They're just waiting." The first scream came from the rear, then another and another, until the air was full of it. Men shouting, steel ringing, the deep, awful creak of bones that should not move. From the tree line poured the dead, dozens, maybe hundreds, skin stretched thin and blue, armor rimed, with frost eyes burning with cold fire. Whites swarmed toward the living like a tide, moving too fast, too relentless. Form ranks, Ned bellowed. Shields front, torches ready. The giants roared, swinging tree trunk clubs that sent bodies flying. Archers loosed fire-tipped arrows into the press. Men screamed as whites dragged them down, the snow drinking their blood. Then the cold deepened, a sudden crushing stillness that made Ned's breath frost inside his beard. Through the swirling snow he saw them, tall, thin figures moving with terrible grace. Armor like shards of moonlight, swords of crystal. White walkers, one raised its blade and the wind itself seemed to howl in answer. The whites surged harder. Ned pushed forward through the line, Longclaw burning in his grip. A walker met him, its eyes like pits of ice. The clash rang like glass, striking stone. Cold bit up Ned's arm with every blow. He remembered Benjen, remembered the stories old Nan used to tell by the fire, and thought, "This is what I came for." With a roar, he drove Longclaw down through the walker's neck. The thing shattered, bursting into shards of frost. The whites. Nearest it froze in place, then collapsed like puppets with their strings cut. But there were more, too many more. "Fall back," Ned shouted. Back to the wall, now. The retreat was chaos, men dragging the wounded, giants swinging. To cover them, Ghost darting through the snow with whites at his heels. The cold followed them like a shadow all the way to the gates. When the great doors of Castle Black slammed shut, the yard stank of smoke, blood, and fear. Men slumped against the walls, too exhausted to speak. John came to Ned, face pale lips, trembling from more than the cold. "We barely made it." Ned looked back at the wall, white and implacable against the dark sky. "Aye," he said quietly, "and next time they'll come for the wall itself." He turned to the men, brothers in black and free folk alike, and saw something new in their eyes. Not trust, not yet, but understanding. They had faced the dead together and lived. For now, he thought, hearing the wind howl beyond the ice. Winter is here, and we're not ready.